welcome back. Today we aren't shooting, we're editing actually. So I have a bunch of photos that are on my hard drive that have been on there for almost a year now, and it's time to edit them. They are from a trip to Italy, and yeah, so today I'm just gonna go through them and edit them and talk to myself while I'm doing it. So that's the plan. Let's do it. Let's start with which one? I don't know. Let's do this one. So I'm just gonna talk about what I'm doing. So I always start with white balance and tint. Honestly, I'm always shooting at auto white balance, so I'm not usually touching these super often unless I'm going for a specific like look or something. Like in the last video, the twilight looking image, I pushed really cool. But this one, I do kind of like a little bit of a cooler look. It's kind of dramatic. So we'll go a little bit cooler. And these were shot on my Sony, which I feel like they tend to lean a little bit green, maybe. So I usually push it a little bit to the red, or the, what is it? Magenta. I guess it's magenta, but whatever, it's red, it's the same. So we are working with quite a dynamic range here. We have lots of shadows, lots of highlights, not that many midtones, which you can see reflected in the histogram. I do feel that the foreground is a little bit more important because that is kind of where the subject is. So we'll lean a little bit closer to that. That looks pretty good. We are probably clipping a little bit in the highlights, but you know, there's no information in here anyway, so that's not my biggest concern. Typically, my workflow is to bring down the highlights a little bit and lift the shadows a little bit, basically to stretch out the detail in the image. So it's almost like pushing it kind of like a log profile. If you know what a log profile is on video, it's kind of like that, pushing the detail so you get as much in as you can, and then hitting it with the tone curve to fine tune the contrast. So that is my workflow. Recently, I have been playing with the clarity. So I used to push this up quite a bit. I used to edit very heavy contrast, but I've been going away from that and I've actually been reversing it. So I've actually been playing around with lowering the clarity to get kind of more like a dreamier look. So obviously you can go too much with this. That looks horrible. But somewhere around there. So you're just getting a tiny bit of this kind of haloing. And then like you kind of lose a little bit of detail, especially in these trees and stuff. So to combat that, I like to push the texture up a little bit to bring back some of that even finer texture. So that's kind of my preliminary edit. And now, one thing that I've also been playing with is once I'm at this stage, shift to black and white and do the tone curve in black and white. Because I find when I'm doing it in color, like if I'm trying to create an S curve here, like I'll get thrown off by the saturation of the colors. So I like to shift it to black and white so I can really fine tune the tonal values of the image basically, right? So typically my workflow is basically create 3 points on the tone curve. So we got middle and then each of these. And this way I can start adjusting like the shadows and it won't throw this off a lot. Typically I'm pushing the blacks up a little bit, not a whole lot. I don't like that type of look. It's like almost like a film look. But I do like a little bit of raised in the blacks, and then slightly lowering the shadows to kind of balance that out a little bit. Usually I start with the shadows and then I push the highlights and then move the midtones where I need them to be. So I I do push the whites down a little bit, but not as much as the blacks. So we're going, this kind of just flattens them out just a touch. And for this image, because the highlights are so bright already, there's not a whole lot you need to do with them. But then, so with the midtones, I'm kind of playing around with up and down and left and right. And honestly, I just kind of move it around until it looks good. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I don't think anyone ever does. So I'll likely move it towards the shadows a little bit because that's where most of the detail is in the image. And I am going kind of high drama in this image, so I'm okay pushing the contrast a little bit. Yeah, somewhere around there might be good. And then, I mean, just play around. So like this point is literally just controlling the sky pretty much. I think I'm happy with that. So this is very interesting tone curve. It's not your standard S curve, which is okay, you know? But anyway, once I'm done with that, go back. And the colors do look a little funky, but that's okay because you can fix those afterwards. So after I'm done with the tone curve, you can see that's what it looked like before. That's what it looks like after. So definitely adding some contrast, bringing up the highlights, but flattening out the sky a little bit. And then I like to go into the HSL, and this is how I control all of my color. I've never been able to figure out how to do it with the tone curve. There's just too many variables. So I always do it with the HSL. A lot of the time, I'm gonna be pushing greens towards yellow a little bit, and kind of lean into the blue-orange contrast. That's what I've been doing recently. So not anything unnatural. That doesn't look very good to me. But just a bit towards yellow, and then the yellows maybe a little bit towards orange, but definitely not as much. And then a lot of the time I'm just picking a slider and moving it left all the way, right all the way, or I guess I said that backwards, or whatever. And just seeing like what tones I'm actually affecting first before making adjustments. But a lot of the time pushing blues towards teal a little bit. There's not a lot of aqua in that. I do see a lot of purple in this, which I'm going to be pushing towards blue a little bit. I like turning it on and off just so I can see if I'm not completely ruining the photo. But that doesn't look too bad. And then usually I jump down to luminance first because I find that the luminance affects the saturation. So you might as well do the luminance first and then dial in the saturation later. I guess that's why I do it. So you can see the green is kind of on this rim of the tree, which I like a lot. So I'm pushing up that quite a bit. And then to make the tree stand out, I might, I kind of like the raised yellows actually a little bit. The blues, could drop them down just a touch. Bring a little bit more detail back into it. Again, there's not much teal in this image. There's a lot of purple in these rocks, which I might drop down to contrast with the grass. Not much magenta. And if I find a slider that doesn't do much, I'll just keep it where it is because there's no sense in changing it. And now I'm playing with saturation. Usually I'm not pushing saturation up in images that much. Mostly decreasing them because when you increase contrast in the tone curve, that also increases the saturation of the image. So typically dropping it down in most cases. I don't like the purple in the rocks. It looks ugly to me. So I'm going to take that out. So turning that on and off. You can see that changes the image quite a bit, especially with the foreground. But that's kind of what I'm going for. And then there's the original. There's the edit that we're working with right now. Now, the fun part, kind of. I've been playing quite a bit with the color grading. So this replaced the split toning, if you remember that in Lightroom. This is now what that is. So usually this is my workflow. So I will push saturation all the way to decide on a color. And usually I'm adding a little bit of blue teal to the shadows. And then I'll set it 0 and slow. Maybe. Sometimes it doesn't cooperate with me. Oh my lord. Okay. So if you hold shift, it'll stay on that line of color, and you can slowly increase or decrease. So adding a touch of cool to the shadows for this image, because it's super dramatic, I might lean into it a little bit more. I found that for this, if you can see a visible difference while you're doing it, it's probably too much. And then depending on the image, I either go mid-tones or highlights for the next step. So the highlights you can see is basically just the sky. That's all we're affecting. Here, this is gonna be like basically the brighter parts of the foreground, which that is what I kind of want right now. So I will warm them up a little bit, usually around there. Honestly, I might push the shadows towards green, actually. Like an olive green. This makes it kind of feel more grounded. And then, because it's green, I'll push these a little bit more orange. Green and orange look good together, usually. I kind of like that. And then, I don't know, yellow highlights maybe. So this is kind of actually turning into a very warm image. Maybe cool highlights. There's the before, there's the after. And, you know, I'm gonna come back to the tone curve. I don't really like where it's going here. I'm gonna push the highlights quite a bit more. I think I like that a little bit better. Yeah, maybe not. Okay, I'm happy with that, actually. Okay, now the next step for me, at least, is going to the local adjustments. Now, I tend to use a lot of radial gradients. So, first step, this tree is the subject. So, we will go ahead and boost the exposure just a bit. And then, one thing that I like to do is add local contrast. So I will go ahead and make 2 masks. One is going to be brushing over the highlights. So here's some highlights. Here's some highlights. There is no science to this. Typically, like, these rim lights are nice to get on there. So like getting that a little bit here. Just kind of some highlights here. Again, no science, no nothing. Just, I don't know. This is just something. So, okay, that's probably good. I have no idea. So then I just boost the exposure just a little bit. So this is not a huge adjustment, but just a tiny bit of exposure like that. And then I will create another brush mask and do the opposite. So this is going to be the shadows. So Shadow there, kind of in between these highlights here. I think that's the key, is like it's almost layering shadows and highlights. So here, this side of the tree is kind of darker. And there's like this, here. Okay, that seems pretty good. And then these ones, I will just lower it slightly. So if we just turn that off, that is the adjustment that it's making. And it just adds a little bit more contrast, a little bit more interest to the image. Here's with no masks. Here's with the masks on. So no science behind it, just kind of adding a little bit of contrast. And then this is the step that I would do, probably some spot removal. These rocks are a little bit distracting to me. So we will go ahead and remove them. I've been doing this AI one, which is pretty good most of the time. We'll see how it does. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, no more distracting rocks. Cool. A lot of the times I'm paying attention to edges, so this, hate that. So we'll get rid of that. See what it comes up for us. Ah, beautiful. AI, what a thing. So, see that thing in the corner, gone. Much better, keeping the edges of the frame clean. And honestly, even this is kind of throwing me off. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that too. Bada bing, bada boom. Yeah, clean edges, baby. That is the final image for that one. And I was thinking about playing around with cropping, but I think the edges of this frame work really well. So we're not cutting off the top grouping of trees. We're not cutting off this second tree here. This is the main subject, this tree. And then this kind of creates a nice framing to the image. So I think this crop works pretty well, which I didn't adjust at all. So nice. All right, on to the next one. All right, we are going with this one today. Well, I mean, we're doing all of them today, but this one right now today. So I'm gonna lean into the dramatic lighting of this image quite a bit, I think. You can see the sun was kind of coming down onto the hills, and there's like these levels to the hill, so it creates these nice highlights on the tops edges of the hills, and then there was some light peeking through highlighting this building here. So that was very cool. For some reason this image is it needs to be warm for me. I think I'm gonna go warm, so we'll just boost it up a little bit. One thing that I try to do is not push anything like white balance or anything like that too crazy in the beginning. Usually I try to do those corrections later on in the HSL or something like that. And then I can always go back and adjust. But white balance usually is kind of close to neutral, but just slightly in a direction that I want it to be. So we'll go a little bit warmer. For this one, actually, kind of like the green. The Sony does tend to go green a little bit, but I think it works in this image. So we'll go a little about there. So again, these adjustments here, preliminary adjustments, are not about creating the look. That is the tone curve, HSL, and what's it called? Color grading. So this is kind of how I approach color grading video too. Preliminary adjustments are about creating a good base to work from for the future edit. This image is going probably to be dark, at the end, but right now I just want to maximize the amount of detail that we're working with. So I will go boost the exposure a little bit, just bring some more details into the shadow areas. Again, not much detail in the sky, so I don't have to drop those down really at all, but definitely boosting the shadows a little bit to bring some detail back into the hills. I'm not really touching the white and black points in this part. I usually use the tone curve, so. And again, negative clarity. I mean, I'll see what it looks like, but typically that's kind of the look that I want to go for. It's like almost like a dreamy feeling. And then bringing back some of that detail with the texture. Okay, tone curve time. So 3 points, boom, boom, boom. We're gonna raise the blacks up. For this image, I think quite a bit, but I'm not sure yet. I'll just leave them about there. And definitely going heavy on the shadows. So you can already see kind of this contrast that I'm going for with the levels of the hills. When you just drop that down, that looks sick. Oh, I forgot to turn it to black and white. We're back in black and white this time. This just goes to show that I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't think I ever will, but you know what? That's okay. For this one, I'm really leaning into contrast. Now, I think I might have to move this point. Oh yeah, there we go. That's what I'm going for. I want minimal detail. Well, not minimal detail, but very dark shadows. Excuse my posture here. Let me just... Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay, I'm happy with that, I think. Let's see. That's fire. Look at that. That's the look I'm going for. And so you can see already that the saturation is kind of higher than it should be. So again, that's why I do it in black and white, so I don't get distracted by that. The tones in this image are where I want them to be. So now it's time to dial in the colors in the image. So for this image, I'll go with an orange and green contrast, which orange and green, are they complementary colors? I don't know, but I know that they look good together. So I'm seeing this building is orange. These hill edges are kind of like orangish, and then a lot of this is green. So we're gonna lean into that, push the yellows towards orange quite a bit, kind of keep the greens where they are. I have noticed that if you push greens really at all to the right, they kind of start to look unnatural, at least for landscapes. So I'm going to leave them where they are. No purple or magenta really in this image, so we'll leave those where they are. Luminance, so I think the oranges for sure need to go up because they're kind of on the edges of these, and the yellows actually. So yellows are kind of the highlights of the greens, or like the parts of the greens that are being touched by sunlight. So we will boost those, but leave the greens kind of where they are because they are in the shadows. The saturation adjustments, we're going pretty subtle with these. The greens are definitely too saturated. So we'll go maybe there. Yeah, so you can see how much that changed the image. Definitely leaning into that orange. Split toning. So in this image specifically, because the sunlight is touching those highlights, I want to push them, well, Okay, I lied. The midtones, there we go. I want to push them towards a little orangish, even more, kind of lean into that quite a bit. And then the shadows probably push towards olive green to kind of complement that orange. So that is the tone curve, or I mean the color grading. So before and after. That's kind of a banger, not gonna lie. And what was my next step? I don't even remember. Probably local adjustments. Again, I don't know if I really have a specific order. I kind of bounce around quite a bit, but this is what I'm feeling right now. So definitely drawing some attention towards this building. And because this building is already kind of lit up and exposed well, instead of raising the exposure on it, I will invert this mask and decrease the exposure everywhere else. So it kind of depends on what you're doing, but this image is really going to rely on that brush technique that I was talking about earlier. So basically every single layer of these is going to have some highlights on it. See how that changes it? That's before, that's after. That's looking pretty saucy. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty fire image, I think. So the one other thing that I was gonna do is play around with cropping. Now, I've heard some people say that you should crop. That's the first step that you should do. But I think it's the last step you should do because I want to know what the photo is going to look like before I start playing around with that. So if you watch the last video, I was talking about a 2:1 crop. So I have that set here. It's kind of interesting. For cropping, again, I like to zoom out a little bit to see where the edges of the frame are going to be. And you know what? I really do like this wire. I don't know what it is about this wire here and then this. It kind of adds to the image. It's what we call a banger. I'm happy with that. Yeah, I'm happy with that. It's cool to edit these photos again. I kind of forgot what I took on this trip. This was in July of last year, so I haven't really had time to get to these photos. I don't know why this one's catching my attention, but we're gonna do this one. So, all right, let's do it. So this one, I don't really see any crazy edits that I'm thinking of right now, kind of like the last one. So I'm kind of just gonna keep it neutral at the beginning. Yeah, not really doing anything crazy with this one, at least not yet. So, black and white, I remembered this time. Bada bing, bada boom. I think maybe we'll lean into like kind of a more filmic look for this. So kind of what that means for me is lifted blacks, flattened whites. It feels very documentative. I don't even know if that's a word, but that's gonna be my word for this photo. So okay, happy with that. Out of black and white. Whoa, saturation much. So you can see how much that changes it. Okay, so I think mid-tones are gonna go orange. Again, this is really just trial and error. I try to think of colors that go well together. but you know, sometimes I end up just completely switching it. You know, this photo's not really doing much in terms of editing, which sometimes that's all right, you know? You don't always have to edit a photo like crazy. This is more like just this is what it was. All right, now we're going to local adjustments. This is kind of the main subject of the photo. I'm going to do this. That looks a little bit better. What are we thinking? What are we thinking? This photo, there's not a whole lot of that kind of edge lighting to highlight. Just something subtle like that. Adds a little bit of depth. There's the before. There's the after. I like how that's turning out. I did sharpen already. So I think one thing I was noticing was there's this dark spot in the sky, which is bothering me. So we will fix that. It's not really in any other corner, so we'll just do a radial gradient to balance it out a little bit, like that. So, boom. And you know, I think that's pretty good. I'm going to just see what the cropping looks like this. But I don't love the tree getting cut off, and I don't love, I don't love it. So we'll do original. Actually, maybe a square. No, I think this photo needs the whole, oh, whoops. Oh my Lord. Okay. So maybe we'll just, I mean, this photo is pretty well composed. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but it's not bad. So, there we go. Done. So let's just go through them. Here we go. There's 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, I guess that's it. We got through 3 photos, and I'm pretty happy with the way they turned out. You know, I have quite a few other trips sitting on my hard drive with unedited photos. So thinking about making this a series where I revisit old trips and edit a couple photos. So let me know in the comments if you would be interested in seeing more photo editing. But yeah, I guess until then, I will see you in the next one.